Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search builds great teams by connecting lawyers in Texas with career opportunities at small and boutique law firms. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel Hare back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Before we get into this episode, I want to let you know of several opportunities that we are currently searching for by city now. In Austin, we're looking for both a family law and an estate planning attorney at good firms. In Dallas, construction lawyers at all levels, really up associate through kind of junior partner level. And then also a securities real estate private offering lawyer. So several things going on in Dallas, and then in Houston, a couple of high-end litigation opportunities and also a high-end estate planning attorney opportunity. And so sometimes I get asked, what does that mean when I say high end? And what I mean by that typically is that they are looking for people that have probably gone to a top, 30 to 50 law school or finished in the top part of their class when they were in law school. They most likely either went to a large law firm or a boutique law firm that kind of, does sort of the same type of work as a large firm does. And so the clientele is that they'll be working with is sophisticated and usually with large amounts of either money or other assets at risk or in play. And so the work is more sophisticated. When I say high end, that's what I mean. And so typically, those are going to be resumes that reflect that. And so, obviously a lot of the positions we search for here don't have that tag on it that I would add, but I did mention them in those three Houston positions, just the way it worked out today. So I thought it made sense to mention that. All right. No fancy introduction today, because for the first time in just under 70 episodes or so, I will be taking this episode solo. And so what I have done is pulled together over all of the 68, 69 episodes that we have out there right now and curated some of the mentoring advice that we've gotten from those guests into some top 5 lists in some categories. So what I've done is I've got our top 5 tips when it comes to impressing as an associate, to be successful as an associate. I've got some top 5 tips as to how to make a lateral change and how to prepare documents and interview and all of that. And then a top 5 of apps and tools and things that can help you that people have mentioned over the course of the show. And then, of course, a rundown of our unscientific poll of our guests as to what is the best legal movie, because we can't have an episode without talking about that. So I'm excited. I'm glad you're here. And with that, let's get into today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the show. It's funny, after 68, 69, 70 episodes, and doing this every week for the last year plus, I get to talk to so many great lawyers, so many great friends and colleagues, and get them to share the great wisdom advice they have for you. And at the same time, I'm talking, of course, to them and asking them questions, and I'm occasionally talking to you all, but not directly as often, and certainly not as much as I will be today. So I'm excited about the chance to get a chance to just visit directly with you. And so this is going to be fun. I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it, even though a lot of what I'm bringing to you today in terms of some top 5 lists on some categories that we cover over the course of the show are summaries and curation of what guests have said. I'm certainly going to be adding some things in terms of my own opinions and views. And obviously, I curated this. So these are the things that I certainly thought either were the most prevalent through the course of the shows, or even if just one or two people said it, I thought really made sense and thought it was important for you to hear. So let's get right to it. How to stand out in your firm, how to impress as an associate. That's the first category that we're going to cover. And I have this top 5 list, but they're in not any particular order. And so this is not like a 1 through 5, 5 through 1. These are just 5 of the top things that I wanted to share. Number 1 is take ownership. And by that, I think that the guests and what I take from that is that when you are given an assignment or a project as an associate, one of the things we continue to hear over and over is that partners and senior associates that are giving out that work really want to see associates who not only obviously do the task or the project as assigned, but also are thinking through what the next steps are, or what new questions have been generated by the work that you've done, and then starting to put together what the next steps would be to move forward. And so I think that came through in a number of conversations. So thinking through the next steps, going ahead and taking initiative. If something is going to lead to a motion that's going to need to be filed, or an order that a judge is going to need to sign, then even if that wasn't asked of you initially, doing that and showing that initiative is something that really impresses lawyers as they've assigned projects to you. I want to be careful here and not suggest that, and I don't think they are either, that you go down a rabbit trail of hours of extended research that may or may not be useful, because you're likely not to be able to bill that, particularly if you don't wind up using it. And so that's not what we're saying. I think what they're saying, what I'm trying to emphasize with this one, is that they don't want someone to just do the exact and only thing that was assigned, give it back, even though that's going to and should have, in your own mind, generated the next step, if it was fairly obvious, or at least a question that you can take to that partner and say, hey, after doing this research, here's what I've discovered. It looks like we should go this way with it. And that would mean, drafting this motion. Would you like me to get started on that? I think even something like that is a way of showing engagement, initiative, curiosity, and a willingness to go beyond what was originally assigned. And so that's number 1, taking ownership, owning the whole thing, thinking through next steps. That's an important one. Another one that comes up relatively often is that you turn in work that is ready to file. I also like to call this the no first drafts rule. And this one is probably 1 and 2 are the first one I talked about, and now this one are probably the ones that have gotten mentioned the most by the guests. And I think what that's getting at is if the partners are having to redraft your work in a significant way, then for them, it's almost as if they should have done it themselves. And that's not what you want. You want them to be able to turn around and file that brief, that motion, whatever it is, with the court, and everybody feel good about it. Now, as a young associate, is a partner probably going to make some changes to your work? Yes. So that's what we're not saying it needs to be perfect, but it's a mentality, I think, more so than anything else of, I think that this comes from years upon years of partners getting work from associates that is clearly and obviously a draft. It's got typos, it's got grammatical mistakes, it's got things that the associate very likely knows are there, or that are probably there and that need to get cleaned up. So therefore the associate is writing it and submitting it to the partner, not with the intent that it could be turned around and filed, or turned around and emailed to the client to get their thoughts on it, but that it's a first draft. And partner, here you go. Here's my first draft. What do you think of this? And that's not what they're looking for. You need to make sure that your work is as clean and as crisp and as prepared to be filed or to be communicated outside of the walls of your law firm as possible when you submit it to them. And so, no first drafts. Now, obviously you're going to write probably multiple drafts of a lot of your work. And so, this is not to say that you can't write a first draft. You should write a first draft and second drafts, third drafts. I think it's different if, the assignment is not due for 2 weeks and you've written a first draft and you go in and talk to the partner, or maybe ask a few questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Where you're not sending it to them as if it's finished and ready to go. You're going to them with some specific questions that you might have about a direction to go on the research or a direction to go on the case, and they can give you some thoughts, and then you're going back and you're still working on it. Those are drafts, and of course, you're still going to be playing with the grammar and the sentence structure and the organization and all of that as you work through it. But then as it gets to whenever you're actually giving it to them, like, okay, here it is. Here is my work. That is when the work needs to be, typo-free, grammatically correct, justified properly, everything styled correctly, footnotes and all the citations done, and that it could be filed. And so now, like we said, it's probably not going to be filed just like that, although it could be. But you want that partner to feel like, man, if I didn't have any choice, if the deadline was today, I could file this. Now we're going to spend some time on it. We're going to reconsider maybe this issue, or we're going to look at, is this the best case to cite here? Maybe we should cite this one. There may still be some changes that get made, but if they had to, they would feel good about what that work product represents of them and their firm and for the client. So that's what we're saying about turning in the work that's ready to file. Third one, accept and learn from feedback and constructive criticism. Obviously, in the legal profession, you have personalities among partners that run the gamut in terms of the way that they will give feedback or not of your work. And what this point here is saying is that you need to be especially eager to learn and learn from however they give you feedback. And so it goes to a few things. One, not taking it personally if they're being critical of your work. Two, not being stubborn and thinking your way is the best way and their way is not. Third is that it shows and represents your character in that you are willing and able to humble yourself and accept some type of criticism or critique of your work, and then go back and learn how to do it. Again, this is a practice. We hear this all the time from the guests, right? This is a practice. Even for the partners, it's a practice, right? They're always continuing to get better, always continuing to learn. And for sure, those of us that are in our first few years of practice have a lot to learn. So we need to embrace that opportunity, because honestly, there are quite a few, not just in the legal profession, but managers, leaders across, just working environments everywhere that don't give feedback to those that are providing work product for them. And it's very, very challenging to get better when you're not getting feedback. And so embrace that feedback, embrace that opportunity to get better. Ask questions about how your work could get better, and then accept and learn from whatever that feedback is. And sometimes, especially we know this in the legal profession, especially sometimes that criticism can be harsh. It not everybody delivers it in the best way. And don't get me wrong, and don't take it the wrong way. There are times where lawyers go across a line, and that can happen. And that's not what I'm really talking about here. But I am talking about developing a little bit of a tougher skin, and being willing to accept, criticism and learning from it, and recognizing that in most cases, the lawyers that are giving that to you are giving that to you for your own benefit, for the benefit of the firm, for the benefit of the client, so that you can get better and you can all better serve the client. And so, and it's in your best interest to become the best possible lawyer you can. And so the only way you're going to do that is to learn and get better. So that's number 3. Number 4, ask for work. Don't sit back and wait for it to be assigned. Oh, this one really just almost like breaks my heart when I hear the stories of this. And I've heard multiple versions of the same story, which is, Jamie was a really great lawyer, did great work. Everybody really, liked her. But at the end of the day, she just wasn't turning in the hours. And the reason is because we just have an environment here where if you're not up and walking around and popping in partners' offices and asking for work, there are other lawyers that are doing that. And so therefore they're getting the work. And so Jamie's still sitting at her desk waiting for work to be assigned, and it never comes. And so at the end of the month or at the end of the year, she's either not hitting her hours or lower on hours than other people. And ultimately that leads to Jamie having to leave the firm. And it's not because she's not a hard worker. It's not because she's not a good lawyer. It's not because she's not a good person. It's only because just the nature of her either understanding of the way it worked in the firm, or just her personality and kind of, insecurities or whatever about this, just led her to think, I can sit back and wait for work to be assigned. And when it's assigned, I'll do my best on it. And she did great work. But that will really get you in certain situations. Some firms more than others, certainly on this one. But I do think that in a more broad sense, even if the firm doesn't kind of operate on that specific type of way of distributing work, I still think it's a good mindset to have, to be popping in. If you wind up in between projects and, it's 3:00 in the afternoon, 4:00 in the afternoon, you're done with one thing, it's tempting. It's easy to say, okay, well, I'll come back in the morning and there'll probably something in my email or something assigned or whatever, instead of, going up and down the hall and saying, hey, what are you working on? Is there anything I can do? And that kind of thing. And so I think getting into the habit of, making the rounds, asking for work, and it's, what else? It's a good opportunity to try and pick the work you want to do. Go into that partner's office who's doing the work or is working on the case that you are especially interested in. What a great opportunity to not just sit back and get handed any old case or any old project or any old file. You can choose, hey, I really like what Alice is working on over there, or I really like what Jake is working on over there, and go into their offices first. And then you can actually start choosing your work if you take that approach and that mindset. So there's opportunity there for you to do things like that if you're asking for work rather than sitting back and letting it come to you. All right, so that's the 4th one. Number 5 is always be prepared. I think this just goes across the board. No matter what, think through how you can be more prepared. And that may be doing the extra research or thinking through the issue that may or may not get raised by the judge or by the other side in an argument. Or it might just be when a partner has you come along for the ride on a deposition or to sit in on a call, to be ready with a notepad and pen, or to take notes on your phone or something, so that you can be ready if something gets assigned right there. And you can take down that note, take down that assignment, take down that project, and you're prepared. You're always prepared. I remember that in the 8 years working at the law school at Baylor, that my boss, Angela, always had a notepad and pen, wherever she went, no matter what it was for, any kind of meeting, any kind of situation where she was going to talk to another colleague. She just always had it because inevitably something would come up. It was an idea, or it was maybe a suggestion, or it was a concern or something. And she just wanted to make sure she had a way to capture that and not have to remember it back to her office, and things happen. You get interrupted on the way back to the office, and you don't write it down, and then you just forget about it. And so always being prepared is something that sort of just is a mindset, and it permeates everything that you do. And so if you're thinking every morning, every day you're in the office about how can I be more prepared, and you're looking ahead to the next day and to the next day, how could I be prepared for that and for that, then you are always going to be in great shape, and you're not going to be caught off guard or surprised, or at least you're going to limit the ways in which you could be caught off guard or surprised. And so I think always being prepared is one that is a consistent one throughout all of the conversations we've had during this show, and a good one to end on. But I'm not going to end on it, because I'm going to give you a bonus one. Number 6, it was going to be top 5. But the number 6 one, real quick, not because it's less important or anything else, but because it's number 6 that I just wanted to mention it here, is to take care of your mental health. We had a number of guests who, when I, at the end of the show, usually open it up for them to talk about something that we hadn't yet covered. Mental health was a popular topic to discuss, and that could be anything from stress to alcoholism, drug abuse, and substance stuff. It could be just taking the time to do exercise and to eat healthy so that your mind is functioning. So just it covers the gamut. But clearly when I gave the opportunity for people to talk about something we hadn't talked about yet, taking care of yourself, if I can broaden it out to be inclusive of physical health, mental health, I think is a great one to end on for this. And that this is the profession of being a lawyer and practicing law over the course of a long career is very hard. It's stressful. People's lives, people's money are in your hands, their freedom sometimes. And so you're going to feel the weight of that. And those that are working on cases with you are going to feel the weight of that. And it's a high pressure, high intensity situation. And it would be hard to, go through a 30, 40, 50 year career of that in the best of circumstances and in the best of physical and mental health. To do it without that, to do it in a way in which you're unhealthy as you go through that, is going to be incredibly difficult and dangerous. And so I'm appreciative of those lawyers who have raised the issue here, and I don't want to give it short shrift. So that's I've added it here as number 6, and so I hope that you'll take that to heart. Okay, 5 keys or 5 key points as you are looking at making some type of career move, job move, lateral move, whatever it might look like. The first one I want to mention is to stay in your current position as long as you can. Let's talk about that a little bit and why I say that. First, it's no question, it's much, much easier to get another job if you have a job right now. And so there's several reasons for that we don't have time to go into today. But there's no question that if you are in a position right now at a law firm, that you are going to have an easier time of making a transition to a different law firm if you stay as long as you can and you're still employed while you're searching, as opposed to if you leave that firm and now you are unemployed while you are searching. The reasons are multiple, but just as a couple of them, obviously, when a firm looks at your resume and sees that you're no longer with a firm, but you're not yet employed somewhere else, it raises questions naturally. What happened? Why did you leave? Were you fired? Were you let go? Were you laid off? Was it, or did you resign? What were there problems? And it's just part of it is for the hiring firm, it's going to be hard to get answers to those questions that are satisfactory and that you feel like you can really trust and go on. Firms really, don't say much about former employees for many reasons. Legal, obviously, main one. And so it's just hard to get to the bottom of things. And candidates likewise don't want to, you don't necessarily want to share everything. And so it's just hard. And so it almost, I think sometimes for lawyers who are in the process of trying to hire new lawyers for their firm, when they see that, it almost makes it to where it may very well be a good candidate, may very well be a benign situation, not anything more than that in terms of why they left. But it's going to be a lot of work to try to figure that out. And we just don't have time for that. And I think it's a practical decision that gets made. I don't think it's a judgment on the candidate. I think it's just a practical decision of we don't have time to dig in as much as we need to try to identify and figure out whether there's something behind the scenes here that caused this person to leave that we would be concerned about here at our firm. So there is that certainly, and there are other reasons. But I think also, while certainly moving around from firm to firm is more common now than maybe 10 years or 20 years or for sure 30, 40 years ago, still I will have plenty of law firms that when they're looking at resumes I send them, or they're just telling me what they're looking for as I'm kind of taking down notes. I will have plenty of firms that will say, we don't want a job hopper. We don't want someone that's been at 3 firms in 4 years. And so that does tend to stack up as a knock against you. And so it's not that you can't find another place to go. But to me, over the course of, that early stage of your career, years 1 through 7, if you're at year 5 and you're deciding to make a move, you are going to have a better time, an easier time, and probably find a better opportunity if years 1 through 5 were at one firm and now you're looking to make a move to firm number 2. So it's your first move versus someone who at year 5 has been at 3 firms. And now this would be firm number 4, because what starts to happen is firm number 4, who's looking to hire you, will think, gosh, they haven't been happy at this firm, and that firm. And I very well probably know people at one or maybe all of those firms. And maybe one or all of those firms are good firms. If this person either wasn't happy there or for whatever reason just wasn't cutting it there, how are they going to be a good fit here with us? So those are just 2 reasons why staying at your firm as long as you can is a good idea. And so I would always encourage that. The second is from day 1, when you start practicing law, so no matter where you are, if you're in year 1, year 3, year 5, stay in touch with your classmates, your colleagues, people that you meet as you are, going to bar events or, well, obviously right now doing things on Zoom, but in a normal environment, sections of the bar that you're maybe getting involved with. It's always good to be keeping and building relationships, because, when it comes down to it, still most jobs, and I'm kind of trying to put myself out of a job here, but most, jobs come about because, placements come about because someone says, hey, I know that, so-and-so is looking to move from their current firm. I went to law school with them. They'd be great. Do we have a place here we can find them? And then that just winds up happening. That job never gets posted even. And someone reaches out to a classmate and moves. And so, oftentimes that can be the easiest and seamless way is through just a connection. You start telling a few of your colleagues and friends, hey, I'm thinking of making a transition. And so if you hear of anything at your firm or maybe another firm, let me know. And that kind of thing happens all the time. And so the more relationships that you have and that you can maintain, the more opportunity you're going to have to connect with and find opportunities that are going to be good fits for you. Because most of the time, those people are people that you would like to work with, that you enjoy. And so therefore, they're probably at firms that you would enjoy working with as well. So, build those relationships, continue the ones that you have. I know it's an effort. I know it's hard, especially in those first few years when you're just trying to bill as many hours as you can, but do what you can to make some time for that. It will benefit you. Okay. The third one, just the very basics here on documents. I mean, you probably heard it over and over and over again from our guests when I asked about this, but it remains needed to be said because it continues to come up. And that is, you just can't have typos and grammatical mistakes and misaddressing of cover letters within your application documents, resume, cover letter, whatnot. It's so basic. And yet I continue to have lawyers tell me that they receive documents that have these problems. And, I don't want to be over dramatic about it. There definitely are firms that will, and you've heard some of them on this show, who will just immediately toss them out and not even consider them. Not every firm is like that. Not every firm is going to immediately toss if there's one, period at the end of a sentence that's bolded or not bolded when it should be, or it's not consistent, or something like that. But there are firms that will, and for sure, if they do continue to have a conversation with you about joining the firm, they're going to be put on notice that they need to kind of double check to make sure that you do quality work, because what those documents, resume, cover letter, even obviously writing sample for sure, are reflective of is what your level of work product is likely to be. And if your one-page resume that you need to do really one time to have it in good shape to send to places has problems with it, what's a 15 or 20 page brief going to look like that's much more complicated and has many more requirements in order to be appropriately written? So that's what we're talking about when we say, get those basics right. And it really will. I mean, for positions that have multiple, dozens of candidates, just right there, you can stay in the top of the stack or stay in the stack as they toss or put to the bottom those that have those problems. And so, I encourage you to not rely on, your Word or any of those tools to identify those, because there are so many things that Word can miss. And so definitely have someone read your documents, go over your resume, cover letter with you. I'm happy to do that if you want to reach out to me as well, obviously. But it's just helpful to have another set of eyes on it. Your eyes can play such tricks on you as you've gone through and looked at something over and over again. And I'm sure you've seen that with the written work product you've done in the past on other projects. It's no different with your resume and your cover letter. Like, there'll just be some things that you miss. And sometimes it won't even be something that's an obvious grammatical or error or typo, but it may just be something that just doesn't sound quite right, that in your head, when you wrote it, it made sense and it sounded right. But then when someone else reads it, for whatever reason, just the way that it's presented, maybe it's a little confusing or it's not quite clear. And so even things like that, things that would not be on the list of typos and grammatical problems, but just more of the way that they sound when read by someone else, can be something that's helpful to identify early. So do the basics right, get that stuff done, and you'll be in good shape. All right, when you're in the interview, I think the number one thing, and it's just proven to be true the more I talk to people, which is ask really good questions of the interviewer when you're being interviewed. It's probably the most important thing that I hear from lawyers, partners, law firms, that allow for candidates to stand out within an interview, and also that can torpedo an interview for a candidate. And let's start with that side first. When either you don't ask any questions, you kind of say the old, "Oh, I think you've answered them all," or you ask questions that don't show much depth, don't show much preparation, that are more focused on the interview process than the firm, the work, the clients. So just by way of example, at the end, they say, "Do you have any questions of us?" You might say something like, "Well, when are you going to make a decision?" Or "How many people are you interviewing?" Or "What's the comp structure like?" Those are all questions. It's not necessarily that they're bad questions. It's not like they're offensive or anything like that. They're appropriate. What they are, though, are process questions that don't show any of your preparation for the interview, don't show any of your interest in this particular firm. You could ask that of any job interview that you walk into, as opposed to, let's flip it now, and the question that you ask is, I saw that you all worked on, Google versus Facebook. If I came in here as a fourth-year lawyer on the team that worked on that, what would you think? What would my role have been? What would I, or if the next one of those came along, where would I slot in, and what would my assignments and projects and responsibilities look like? I want to see, if what I've done kind of maps to what, in my experience, my skills, like map to what I'd be coming into. And I want to be challenged. I want to be able to grow. I also want to be able to feel competent and know that I can come in and do a good job for you and do a good job for the client. Well, so that does a few things. Something like that's just a very simple example, but it's contrasting with those earlier examples I gave. And it's also showing that you at least did some research, what kind of work they do, or at least some of the clients and matters that they've handled. But then also it shows that you're wanting to really figure out how you fit into this team, to this environment, to this group, and to this firm in terms of your work and your candidacy. And if you were to be on their team, what that would look like. So you're really trying to figure out if you're a good fit and if they're a good fit for you. And I think firms appreciate that. And so that's just a fairly simple example. It also, and I think this is really important, and sometimes it gets taken for granted because you're there at the interview. Maybe you think it's assumed, but firms don't think it's assumed. And what they want to know is, why do you want to work there? And do you actually have interest in working with our firm, or do you just want a job? Do you just want out of where you are currently? And this just happens to be a place that has an opportunity, and so you're here. But really, you're not super interested in us. You're just really interested in getting out of where you currently are, and this will do. So that's what's in their minds. So you have to affirmatively, because they may not ask you directly. That's the thing. If you get a direct question, you can answer it and you can do a good job answering it. But if you don't, you have to take initiative to be able to persuade them that, no, I'm here because I know what you all do. I've researched, I've dug in. I know I've read your bios. I've read some of your filings. I've read news articles about you and all of the different awards and honors you've gotten for different things. And I know this is a place that I feel like, from what I can tell so far, is a place I would really do well, and a place that I would like to be. I mean, that they're wanting to hear that kind of thing. And so it's important to do that. All that goes together in this idea of ask good questions, be prepared, demonstrate your interest in the firm, and you can really do a good job of it in the question format. Okay. The last one, and I just will kind of categorize this as the human factor. And this one, there's a little bit of a split on, so you kind of have to read the room. But I would say overall, probably 3-1 on this, that most interviewers want to get to know who you are as a person and get a sense of what other interests that you have and what type of things that you like to do for fun, and what you are like kind of outside the office, especially in a small firm environment where it's like we're talking about 6 lawyers, 8 lawyers, 14 lawyers. You're going to spend so much time with those same people that it's going to be more helpful, and the group is going to be more efficient if they just enjoy each other's company. And it doesn't mean everybody's the same, but it means that everybody can get along and can appreciate one another and respect one another. And so, having some commonality, having some just a common touch point, or even a not even common touch point, but like an anchor in terms of who you are as a person and outside of the office is helpful for that. And so I think being willing and able to share, whether it's your interests, your hobbies, your things that you've done that are maybe unique or whatever, are a good way to do that. And so that's something to consider. It can be on your resume as like an interest section, or something that you discuss in your interview as well. But I think people generally want to, in an interview, feel like they're talking to a human being and to another person, and not just the next candidate for the job. So that's the last one on this list, and we will move on from there. So we've done how to stand out in the firm as an associate, 5 ways to do a good job in getting ready for and getting out there to do interviews and find another job if you're looking to make a move. I also want to share with you, and we'll link to all these in the show notes to this, so you don't have to remember all these or write them down. I also want to share with you, I always ask the lawyers about any productivity tools or apps or anything like that they use. And so I just want to highlight a few of them here. The first one that sort of I'll group as timekeeping apps. And so, some of this stuff, if you're at a firm that everybody uses all the same stuff, you may not have flexibility with this. But for some of you might be able to either just, suggest it to your firm or in certain circumstances, just use it yourself if it works for you. But we had Centerbase and Intapp, that's INTAPP, those two, and I'm sure there are others, but those two were recommended by different lawyers over the last year on the podcast as helpful timekeeping apps. And so I would point you to that. Slack is one that's going to be a little bit broader in terms of like you need more people than just you to use it, obviously. But if it's something that your firm is trying to figure out, how do we manage projects and how do we keep people communicating and maybe try to cut down on the amount of email that we're having to send back and forth and that can get lost and all that. If we need a place to just drop everything from a certain case or a project into and communicate there, Slack is a good option for that, and one that several people mentioned. I think it's picked up ground over the last year during the pandemic for sure. And obviously, and I'm not going to mention the video like Zoom and those. We've all gotten used to those and know that different courts and things like that are using. Most are okay using Zoom. Some are using a few of the others, but I'm not going to mention those here in this section. Another one that was shared is something called Solver, Soulver. This is an Apple product only. I don't think it's available on PC or Android, but it allows you to do some quick math. So if you need to figure out the difference between, or what's 45 days from now, 90 days from now, 180 days from now, whatever, you can throw in dates. It gives you quick numbers, currency and money, differences between that, just sort of real quick math, back of the envelope type of things that are maybe a little bit more than what a standard just calculator can do, but you don't want to break into Excel and try to do formulas and stuff like that. It seems somewhere in between there, but can be very helpful as you're having to deal with any kind of dates, money, numbers, just anything like that. So check that out if you're using Apple products. Solver. Next point is another one. That's an e-discovery tool. And I know there's a number of e-discovery tools out there, but that was one that was mentioned by a couple of folks here. And then also Notability is the last one I'll mention. It was It's an iPad app for taking notes and for marking up things on your iPad. That's one to check out. Also, I'll link to this here in the show notes as well. One of our guests, Wesley Lotz, had done a presentation, I think at a CLE, where they had accumulated several dozen, I think, smart apps for lawyers. And in different categories. And so I'll put that in this section as well, so you can maybe browse through. I think it's about a year or two old, so there may be some new ones that would be added to that list, and some that maybe have been bought, by other larger companies or something like that. So they may be in different names, but I think it'll give you an idea of some other tools that are out there if you want to browse through there and see if there's anything that might help you in your practice. Okay, so we've done standing out, we've done job hunting, we've done productivity tools, and of course, we can't leave it here without the most important section of the conversation that we have with Lawyers on Monday mentors, and as well as specifically our movie verdicts podcast episodes, and that is legal movies. So I went back and looked at all of the different legal movies that were provided from the guests as their favorite legal movies. And so I'm going to count these backwards from the least suggested to the most suggested, or the least favorite to the most favorite, and let you know where we're at with this. Now, remember, we do movie verdicts episodes every couple of months or so. It just kind of depends. We've got 8 or 9 out there now, I think, and we'll do some more. The last one we did was Primal Fear, and it's in your feed right now. It was the first one we did in 2021, so we're due for another one here soon. But I will start with, there are, 13 movies that were mentioned by one person, and that was it. So we had The Devil's Advocate, The Pelican Brief, The Lincoln Lawyer, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, Runaway Jury, Just Mercy, Breaker Morant, Bridge of Spies, Intolerable Cruelty, 12 Angry Men, Liar Liar, The Paper Chase, The Informant, and Knives Out. So that group all were suggested by one guest over the course of the last year as their favorite legal movie. We then had 3 movies that were mentioned by by 2 people. We had Aaron Brockovich, The Verdict, and A Civil Action. Okay, so that takes us actually now down. There are only 5 movies left on my list here. We had, with 3 votes, we had The Firm. So The Firm was 3 votes. That leaves 4 movies left. To Kill a Mockingbird was suggested as the favorite legal movie of 4 guests. And so that, and there's a break now. Okay, so we've had 1, we've had 2, we've had 3, we've had 4. No movie was mentioned by 5. No movie was mentioned by 6 people. The next grouping, there are 2 movies that were mentioned by 7 guests. And so these are kind of the tied for silver medal recipients here. And that would be A Few Good Men and Legally Blonde. So A Few Good Men and Legally Blonde tie for second here with 7 favorite movie nominations from our guests over the past year. And then finally, as probably not a surprise, 10 lawyers mentioned this first place winner of our unscientific poll as best legal movie, which they said, 10 of them said My Cousin Vinny. So not a surprise that My Cousin Vinny leads the way. We have done that. We have done Legally Blonde. We have done A Few Good Men. We have not done To Kill a Mockingbird or The Firm, or Aaron Brockovich, The Verdict, or A Civil Action. So we have quite a few available to us here at the top of the list. And so I'm excited to be able to bring some of those to you here in 2021. In fact, here's what we've got going. If you would go to LinkedIn, and I have a poll that I put out, which is asking you which movie we should do next on the show. We've got those 4 that we just mentioned, To Kill Mockingbird, The Firm, Aaron Brockovich, and The Verdict. in the poll question, a civil action, because the LinkedIn poll only lets you do 4, was left out. So if that's one that you really want us to do, you can message me that. But I would encourage you to go vote on that, or shoot me a message, shoot me a note, whatever, and we will take that into account. And we are planning to record our next Movie Verdicts podcast very soon, and we want to get your feedback on which one to do next. And we want to pick out of this group here that our guests have said and that we haven't got to. So excited to do that. So that's our Movie Verdicts wrap up from all of our guests. So thanks to all of our guests for giving those recommendations. I will include this entire list in the show notes. So if there's a legal movie on here that you either hadn't heard of or you hadn't thought of as a legal movie, or maybe just one you haven't seen but you've been meaning to, here's a good list for you to go off of and enjoy one night this weekend or over the next few months as we're still riding out this pandemic at home. So there is that. All right. That is our show for today. I really appreciate you hanging in with me here on our first solo show. We will be back next time with a special guest on a Monday Mentor episode. And like I said, we'll have another Movie Verdicts episode shortly. And so looking forward to that. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing 2 things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then would you rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen? And if you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, please email me directly, Daniel@VarsitySearch.com. Also, don't forget to reach out if you are interested in any of the opportunities that we mentioned at the top of the show, or if you just like to talk about the market in general and what options there might be out there for you. If you're thinking about making a move, or you're trying to figure out when's a good time to do that, and some things to think through before starting to really look in earnest, would love to talk through that with you. So reach out to me on that as well. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.